Good evening, everyone. We'll get started here for the Board of Commissioners meeting, legislative meeting of Nether Providence Township of May 27, 2021. We will start with our roll call, starting with our solicitor and then township manager and then the commissioners.
Good evening, Tiffany Griffin. I'm with the Office of Robert Scott.
Dave Grady, Township Manager.
Max Cooper, Ward 1 Commissioner.
Matt Garson, Second Ward Commissioner.
Kate McKenzie, 4th Ward.
Robert O'Connor, Ward 6.
Marty Malloy, Ward 7.
And our 3rd and 5th Ward Commissioners, Knapp and King, are excused for this evening. Some sad news as we begin tonight's meeting. We found out recently that former Commissioner Merv Harris passed away a few weeks ago. Merv was a former state representative, obviously a former township commissioner, served on our historical commission for many years, and wrote the history book for Nether Providence. I'll ask that everyone remain standing for a moment of silence after the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we're going to turn to public comment. I don't know if we have anyone on the line, but it does look like we have some folks here in person. So I'd ask you to come over to the podium and just state your name and your street name, please.
We are Sheila and Ron Reese. We live at 504 East Country Club Lane in Lapedia Hills. We've lived there for 27 years. I'd like to thank the commissioners for giving us the opportunity to comment tonight. We're asking the commissioners to consider 3 things tonight. First, closing the back entrance to the Springhaven Club. Second, pausing any further traffic mitigation measures in Lapedia Hills. And third, improving your communication process for ordinances. During the past 9 months, our neighbor and Commissioner Max Cooper initiated email conversations in response to complaints of increased speeding in the neighborhood, thought primarily to be drivers entering and exiting the back entrance at the Springhaven Club. Many ideas were exchanged, and the conversation left off during the winter with the suggestion of a traffic study and possible remediations to be taken under advisement. We commented in several emails that Lapedia Hills should not be asked to make neighborhood changes to mitigate risk that's created by the Springhaven Club. The rear entrance to the club should be closed except for emergency vehicles and service vehicles. This would reduce traffic flow and enhance neighborhood safety. We are not convinced that the township has sufficiently explored this solution. The township then passed an ordinance on May 13th to install multiple stop signs in Lapedia Hills after months of no communication with the neighbors. There was no general notification from the township of the proposed ordinance, and therefore no opportunity to comment and suggest changes. Where was the common decency and the common sense in that process? The stop sign in front of our home was placed explicitly where we said it was not warranted or wanted. We're frustrated and disappointed by the lack of communication and openness in working with all the neighbors to develop the plan before significantly altering the character of our neighborhood. Then further, on May 18th, Mr. Cooper emailed a drawing from Catania Engineering with possible additions of planters, signage, and striping in the neighborhood. We are opposed to these changes. We think they take away much of the character that makes the neighborhood so desirable. We suggest that the township pause at this point to evaluate the effectiveness of the new stop signs prior to implementing any additional changes. 3 items if you want to serve our neighborhood more effectively. Close the back entrance to Spring Haven, pause any additional traffic mitigation changes in Lapedia Hills, and then improve how you communicate pending ordinances to your township residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's correct. I'm happy to comment on that. Yeah, we had conversation with our fire marshal, we had conversation with the club, and we had conversation with our solicitor. The fire marshal would not allow us to gate it. We talked about alternatives such as making it a one-way, which we thought would have a similar effect. The country club refused. In conversation with our solicitor, we were told there's no legal mechanism to force their hand as it's private property. Given that we wanted to improve the safety of the neighborhood, given the drunk driving incident, given the large number of pedestrians, given the large number of children, we were left with only 2 choices to mitigate speed. Speed bumps were one, which was discussed and roundly rejected by everyone I spoke to. And the other one were the planters, which would be, I think, the least invasive of the slowing options. I understand that you don't want us to do any speed mitigation projects. For me and the neighbors that I have spoken with, that's an untenable situation. And so we feel like we're forced to act in some capacity. And we felt like the plan that we put in place was the least invasive of the possible plans. I've taken your comment about improving communication to heart, and I've specifically talked to Dave about some other projects that we have planned. And there will be significant improvements. The mechanisms that I used to communicate before were mass mailing lists that were provided to me by members of the neighborhood, members of other neighborhoods, and I used those to email people. The lists were incomplete and I didn't get all the feedback because of it. For some of the flood mitigation projects that we're planning in other parts of the town, speed mitigation projects in other parts of the town, I've asked Dave to send official mailers to all the residents so that communication can be more clear. That's a very good point, and I take that very seriously, and I thank you for that. So that's all that I really have to add right now. My recommendation to the township is still that it's unsafe, and I still think we need to move forward. I've been working with you and some of the other residents who had specific concerns about placements of stop signs, and I'm happy to continue to work on that. For example, we removed the light from your sign and we moved it to a different spot, and I'm furthermore happy to request that the township lower the height of the stop sign so it is not so high above your kind of shrubbery, so it's not as much of an eyesore. But it's still necessary to mitigate rerouting of traffic, I believe, to the sides of the neighborhood. And I've received several comments from many of our neighbors thanking me profusely for these changes. So I understand we're grieving you. We'll continue to reassess the project as traffic patterns change. But I think for right now, we need to give it a shot and see how it goes.
Mr. Chair, am I allowed to comment again, or?
I mean, I think Max responded. If you have something else you want to say, you can go ahead.
I'm fine if you respond again. Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and Max. So thank you for the research on the Spring Haven Club. I'd love to see that in detail or talk to the solicitor myself. That notwithstanding, we've lived in the same home for 27 years. There has never been a pedestrian, bicycle, child, adult, jogger incident of any type. And so, I understand why you want to mitigate traffic on Spring Haven Road for families with young children there. I'm less convinced at our end of the neighborhood. All that said, what we are asking is that you just pause any additional mitigation methods like the planters and the striping to see if the stop signs serve the purpose, because every step that you take alters the character of a very quiet residential and desirable neighborhood. And when you start striping roads and putting up signs and putting up planters that may or may not be maintained in the long term, I think you are definitely dumbing down the neighborhood aesthetically. And so we would just like to see you give it a chance with the existing stop signs that have been implemented, not make any other changes, and evaluate how effective those stop signs are. And then and only then come back and make additional changes. So that's our request. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chair and Max and board.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Manager Grady, do we have anyone on the line? Okay, well, I'll just remind everybody, if you're watching from home and you'd like to call in, you can dial 312-626-6799. And the meeting ID will be 844-1958-5381. Next up is our solicitor's report.
The solicitor's office has nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. Next up is our engineer. Thank you. All right. Next up is our Public Safety Committee report, which I will take in President Knapp's absence. The first item is cameras in parks. Commissioners have a draft proposal of a policy regarding the use of closed-circuit television cameras. This was a policy that our solicitor had actually drafted for an adjoining municipality. We're not going to be taking any action this evening on this. My suggestion would be for commissioners to review this over the next few weeks. If you have any comments or questions, you can certainly reach out to Solicitor Scott with those comments and questions. It would be nice if we could be in a position at our next meeting, which is on June 24, to kind of have a deeper dive discussion about the policy. And if, if the board wants to move forward on this, we can discuss doing so at that time. One other kind of part that goes along with all this, if we have a policy, if that's ultimately the direction we decide to go in, I think we're going to have to make a decision about who decides where cameras go. Is that something that the township administration does? Is that something that the police department does? Or is that something that the commissioners do? So what I'd like to do is to reach out to Solicitor Scott to see if he has any thoughts about that. It may be something where the administration works with the police department and then they come to the board and they say, we need a camera here or there, and the board votes on it. I think there's some wisdom in ensuring that the board has control over where cameras would go should we go in that direction. Any comments or questions before we move on to the next item?
No, I agree. I would only add, I'm curious what neighboring municipalities have as their process. Not that we necessarily need to directly copy it, but I'm kind of curious, what the landscape is for similar things. I definitely agree that I'd like the Board of Commissioners and elected officials to remain in the loop when it comes to kind of surveillance type projects and not have it be purely in the hands of, administration or police.
Sure. And I think, Chief Splain isn't here this evening, but when he's back for our next meeting, I think he can speak to what other municipalities do in terms of setup for camera systems. All right. The next item, moving on, is stop signs on Blakely and Cedar Roads. Manager Grady, my understanding that there was a request for stop signs?
That's correct. It is currently a two-way stop. So there was a request to make it a four-way intersection.
Okay. And have we gone out yet to take a look at the intersection?
We have. Township Engineer Charles Catania and I actually reviewed it yesterday. It does appear that there are some sightline issues at the intersection. I may let Township Engineer. Did I cover it? Okay. So there are some sightline issues. A sightline issue being one of the main criteria for stop sign installation. So it would appear that it would be warranted at this intersection.
Okay. And are there obviously there's neighbors over there that have asked for the placement of the stop signs? That's where the request came in?
Correct. We did receive it from a neighbor in that area.
Okay. Do you need any action from us this evening in terms of advertising for ordinance?
If the board is in agreement, you could authorize advertisement of it and then pass it at the June 24th meeting.
Okay. So I'll open it up for discussion. It sounds like the intersection does meet the criteria for stop signs.
Yeah, and I would just add anecdotally, for what it's worth, I'm there a fair amount. The Foundry Church does a lot of really great work in that area, and that you're on both sides of it. So I think that makes sense to have a stop sign there.
Have we talked to the neighbors? Are they,
It sounds like the request came in from the neighbors. That's what Dave was saying.
all right, as long as it's sort of a group of them and not just one person?
Yeah. Hey, Dave. Do we know if, is it a group of neighbors that want it, or is it just one neighbor?
It was just one neighbor that has reached out to us, and it may not be a bad idea to reach out to the neighbors at
Let's
the
do that.
corners
Yeah.
of the intersections.
So why don't we ask the folks that made the request to go back to their neighbors and see what they think, and if people are on board, we can talk in our meeting in June about advertising.
Which board is this?
5, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe we need to make sure we get like a good understanding of everyone's view.
Yep.
Just for my own education.
It is Cedar and Blakely, so it's right near the Foundry Church. The Foundry Church has a parking lot on Blakely and Walnut, and then Cedar and Blakely is on the back end of the church, so a lot of people can park and move there. But there's a lot of activity in that space because they do things, whereas everything else in 5 is pretty much residential in that area.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I recognize that corner. I've been there before.
Manager Grady, if you can reach out to the neighbor that made the request and also loop in Commissioner King, since it's her ward, then we can talk about it more in June.
This is it up there on the screen.
Thank you.
The problem being if you're approaching from this angle here, it could be a little tricky to see around that corner there, which is why a stop sign may be warranted at
Is
this
that-
location.
Is
and
that
this
the church
location.
where the Cub Scouts hold their meeting? I thought it was at that corner.
So much that happens there.
Either way, there's a lot of pedestrian activity. I think it makes a lot of sense. I just want to make sure we get feedback, not just from the people that requested it, but from all the neighbors at the intersection.
Agreed.
Would it, this is more of a procedural point. Would it make sense to wait and talk to the neighbors, or would it make sense to advertise and get comment through advertising? Can we do both of those things simultaneously?
I think it costs money to advertise, and also my understanding is once we advertise, we have to act within a certain amount of time. So I
Roger
think we
that.
should go back to the neighbors first.
It's good
Be
to
my
know. Thanks.
recommendation.
No, we would be advertising for the end of June, correct though?
No, what we would do in June, we would move to advertise, and then we'd have to take action at the meeting after that, which would be July.
So, I mean, we have a lot of lead time. We can probably, make all of our actions now and send a letter at some point in the next week or so saying,
Sure.
meeting at the end of July, this is the anticipated date. We'd love to hear your feedback. Email this. Come speak public comment.
Yep.
I think we can probably move.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on. All right, the next item on the agenda is the trailer parking ordinance that we moved to advertise. I believe it was at our last meeting. We discussed this. There's been some issues with trailers being parked on public streets throughout the township. The ordinance is in our packets. Do commissioners have any questions about it?
Pretty extensively last time.
Yeah. So at this point, I'm going to move to approve. Do we have an ordinance number on here? 828. Sorry about that. I'm going to move to approve ordinance number 2021-828, which is an ordinance of Nether Providence Township, amending provisions of the Nether Providence Township Code for the purpose of regulating the parking of trailers on public streets.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 5-0. All right, that's the end of the public safety report. Now on to Public Works with Commissioner O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Several items here tonight on the agenda. First item is no parking on Brookhaven Road and also Putnam Boulevard. I guess I'll start with the Brookhaven Road. I think the issue just came up here from some residents who kind of reminded me or maybe brought to my attention that I think we have some no parking signs. I know we have the one to the right. Dave, I forgot to look as I was heading to the meeting tonight. I kind of think we have one to the left, but we might not. I can't remember. We might not. We don't. Okay. So I guess what we were just hoping to maybe do there was just get someone out and kind of give us an idea where those signs would go and, in accordance with appropriate regulations and all that stuff, and then, maybe get back to us with that information, and we can see what we could do to make sure that the folks who are exiting from that Sackville Mills Lane there can see better when they're trying to pull out.
And do we know if there's a no parking ordinance there now?
No, I don't think there is.
Okay.
I don't think there is. I think
Oh.
they've researched that and came up with.
Okay, so we would be looking to see where we could potentially place no parking
Correct.
signs, and then we could talk about an ordinance to put them up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Dave, Putnam Boulevard, is that the one we were talking about with the kind of tied in with the prior agenda item?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think I was just was trying to bring that up then really quick, and of course my phone won't cooperate. But anyway, while I'm trying to do that, I think we got a message here from the resident who had brought that issue to our attention, and she said after reading the email from you, the owner of the RV wasn't in violation. She agreed no parking signs, if they were put up, would only move the RV to another spot, and she considered the matter closed and thanked us for looking into it. That said, I guess I'll still probably hear back from Chief on the issue because I think he was sending Officer Smith out to take a look. And just so everyone knows, there was just an issue that was brought up with regard to the parking of a larger vehicle on Putnam Boulevard. So sorry for kind of doing that backwards, but anyway, that's kind of what the issue was there. So anyway, that's all I had on that. If anyone has any.
And we'll try to make contact with the owner of the RV. We can always request that it be moved, but
Yeah.
I think as you noted, we can't force them to move it, but sometimes people will politely comply.
Right, exactly. Okay. All right, well, hey, thank you and appreciate all your help on that, obviously, as well. And if there's not any more discussion on that, the next item on my agenda is road resurfacing. And I guess it's come to our attention that one of the roads that we plan to pave is going to be on Aqua's list for next year. It's Sheffield Drive. It would reduce or give us an additional approximately $13,000. And I think we'd probably all agree it makes sense if Aqua's going to do it next year. It probably makes no sense for us to do it this year. So maybe we can take a look if we want here at the budget and see if there's or at the street lists and see, if we want to come up with a plan B or C to maybe fill that gap.
We have a wish list, right? From when we talked about it before, like an ordered wish list.
We do. I would also suggest, I know, I'm going to pull up one of the streets that I believe we're going to do is Ryanard in Ward 5, and we're not doing the whole street. We're just doing a section of it. With that money that we may be pulling back from Sheffield, could we put that to another road that we're already starting and do another contiguous section? Just an idea.
It's right. It depends on what part of Sheffield, because it splits between Robert and mine.
Sure.
Man, I know the street I want. It's School Lane, but I don't know where School Lane.
Yeah.
I mean, school, but I would obviously want to take Charles's advice on this, because obviously I think School Lane needs love and attention. But if there are other roads that are worse, then
The map visually was just helpful. It's very dense data right there. Yeah, no problem. I know it's probably hidden from a couple meetings ago.
I also don't know how much School Lane. Like, I don't have the budget number in my head.
Are there any other roads in your ward that we bid out?
Yeah, no, the other two that I was advocating for were both in Ward 5.
Okay.
Previously.
My eyes are so bad.
I'm looking at School Lane right now on Google Maps, but yeah, who knows if this is current.
So school. Actually not.
So School Lane was a yellow. Is that, am I remembering correctly, is that a 2? And with Sheffield, the orange one above it, was that a 1?
Yes.
Are there any other 1s in that region?
I believe all of our ones have been covered.
Looks like there's that nub of Morris there, or stub.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've had requests and I've walked school quite a bit, so I think school makes a lot of sense.
Well, I think that's fair. I mean,
Sure.
I don't know if, I don't know if we need to talk about it
Yeah.
a ton. If we can do a comparable section for the
Yeah.
money, just sub it in.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, Charles, can you look into that and see if we can do it for what we were going to pay to do?
It looks
Sheffield?
like School Lane from Georgetown to Moore is about $30,000. I think Sheffield was only 15.
Yeah.
Right. It's smaller. That's a bummer because it would have looked nice with the new sidewalk there too.
Yeah.
Unless
maybe-
you wanted to divide it in half and do half of the road.
No.
Okay.
I think maybe then.
How about that block of Moore Road that we get complaints on?
Yeah, some of the stuff towards the 6th.
Would that be around for?
The Moore Road from school to Maryland is about $13,000.
How do you feel about that, Marty?
I feel
That's a good, and that's like
That's
right
a
in
no
front
on
of NPE, right?
well, it's no, it's further down. It's towards Roberts.
It's just to the.
But kids are walking,
But it
riding
needs
bikes
it.
there, and okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
I'd be good with that.
All right, let's
It's
do
about the
that.
same length, same.
All right, so let's do that. I don't
Yeah.
think we need a motion for that, do we?
It would be 13,400 from School Lane to Maryland. Is that what you were saying, Charles?
That's the estimate. I can change that to the actual price of it. If I recall, Dave, help me out. This was part of phase 2, yes, because all phase 1 was on contract. The budget, the bids for phase 2 came just incrementally higher than the estimate. So if we say it was 13.4, that made that $14,000.
I mean, it seems like an almost even swap. That makes a lot of sense. And plus, along the lines of the kids walking and with the other work that was done last year on Moore Road, that section up towards Brookhaven needs some love.
Well, I agree that area of the township hasn't had as much resurfacing done. So let's sub that in.
Yeah.
What, do you need a motion from us for it?
We can do that.
Charles, just. Yeah. Yeah, I just question for you. The one side of Moore had some restoration that was done as part of the sidewalk project. That's the other side is the really bad side, isn't it? What do you think about, instead of doing curb to curb, stretching the length a little longer? Because I think that whole stretch potentially from close to Bickmore really isn't in great shape. And maybe that's something we could figure out offline. If this is the direction the board is interested in going, then maybe we could.
Well, why don't we take a look, and then, because the work isn't starting when that work's not starting for a bit, right? We're doing the aqua work now. Then we do need to make a decision.
Yeah, because we have 3
Yeah.
weeks, I believe, or 4 weeks until next meeting.
So what were you just suggesting? Sorry, from where to where?
Typically, when we're doing roads, we'll do curb to curb, both
Mhm.
lanes. The stretch that's shown here, I mean, Charles, at roughly 14,000 is a very small stretch. You're going from
Oh.
Maryland to here.
Right.
And conceivably this whole area,
Yeah.
this whole yellow area is bad.
Oh, that would be weird just to do that tiny little stretch. In my head, I didn't have that.
That's what I'm saying. And also because the side where the sidewalk was done, there was some restoration that was done in that area. So it's really, I mean, both sides could probably use it, but I think the eastbound direction is in worse
Agreed.
condition than the westbound side.
So you're talking about eastbound then from Georgetown
So-
to Maryland?
So that's why I was looking for Charles's opinion on doing just the eastbound side and stretching it out a little further. It's a little hard to say. We haven't studied it closely. This is fortunately something I just thought of.
Well, I mean, we could give some guidance. I mean, if you think we can get some work done that would be worthwhile on Moore Road with the money that we have, you know, that could be alternative one. And if we don't think that's going to be worthwhile, we could do a contiguous stretch of another street that we've already committed to doing, be my
Right.
suggestion.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
And Charles, do you think that with the township's paving machine, this would probably be a large project for them? At least a larger stretch of it. That's what I was thinking. The thinking was if we use that money towards materials, you know, that pay for, we have our sunk cost of labor,
Yeah.
it would be a lot.
I would actually say, I don't think if it's just that section from school to Maryland, that itty bitty little section, I would not say that should not be
No.
option one. If it can do a larger stretch, either like school down to Bickmore or, what's the road, not Creekside there, but right next to it, it's
Hastings?
Hastings, thank you. Hastings to School Lane, something like that. And that's fairly significant, and that's right in front of the school. But if we can't do eastbound on like that larger stretch like you suggested, then it just makes sense to extend a road that we're already doing. Or materials, I'd be fine with either one.
What about that orange short road in Garden City? Kind of the top right part of Garden City, up and to the right.
Ash and Blakely.
Yeah, I believe it's Ash, looking at this map. Ash, yeah, coming west of Blakely. It seems like a small section of road that was concerned. Was that already included?
I will also say, it's not on here because it's green, but down at the bottom where Harvey Road turns into Ridley and crosses Chestnut, at that spot, it is nasty right now. So it is really bad. Right.
Kind of at the corner of the Arboretum entrance?
Yep, right there, right at Taylor. It's, and getting worse.
Yeah, and there's sightline issues there too, so,
I
I mean,
think it is. We could probably just pothole it almost. Oh, that's good to know. Yes. If they're just a fill-in, it might be easier just to categorize it in that.
It may be easier to just save the money. You know, either that or just, like I said, do something contiguous to what we're already doing.
Yeah, I'd be fine with either one of those things.
Me as well.
This money would be liquid fuels money that's being used here. So any money that's saved would just can continue to build up in our liquid fuels account and could potentially be put towards another project. Next year, it could be work that our public works department could do. So there's still some flexibility with it, but
Well, and we're gonna have a next round of aqua stuff too,
we will later, right?
right?
All right. So why don't we save it and lump it in and make a bigger road somewhere else?
All right, so it's sounds like we're gonna just say, we're gonna bank it.
We could do, if we add it to something else, we could probably do something.
Yeah,
In a driveway.
yeah. It's just, it's not enough to,
Or two.
we'd love to pave everything. Unfortunately, we can't. All right.
Exactly. Okay, all right, well, any other discussion on that?
Nope.
And hearing none, I guess the next item on my agenda is streetlight additions. And thanks again to Dave for all his efforts on helping with this. He's got in our packet, I guess, another copy of the criteria for streetlight. I don't think anything has changed on here from a couple weeks ago, has it, Dave?
No.
No, so, okay, so just so everyone knows, I went out, I guess, after our last meeting and took a look at the two intersections and kind of to my surprise, I was like, wow, there's no streetlights. And then I looked like around the rest of the neighborhood and I was like Garnet and Cooper and Wilder and Beaumont. And I was like, wow, there's no streetlights. And I was like, wow, that's kind of funny because two of my best friends grew up on Wilder and we would have probably gotten in a lot more trouble if there were more streetlights. So that worked out good for me when I was younger, I guess. But anyway, but that said, there are, like I said, there's no streetlights. And so I guess Dave has put together a proposal. And I don't know if everyone has it in their packet, but if, I guess, well, I don't know if Dave, you can pull it up. Are you able to pull it up for,
Oh, the Higgins, yes.
please, please. And Dave, if I could just ask you, like, how do we come up with, like, I guess Higgins just does this, I guess, like they come up with like how many lights and all this other stuff. And
Yes, that's correct. We had Higgins go out and we asked them to look at the whole street. I mean, obviously each street's going to be a little bit different depending on where the electricity is run. If it's rear fed,
right,
for example, if it has poles.
how close things are.
Yeah, these actually worked out to be okay conditions cost wise because there was easy access to poles and electricity there.
How many, like, how much of an area does this street light?
That
Does this provide lighting just for those, like, you know, that small area, or is it the streets, or?
if you put it at an intersection, I think it would light up the intersection pretty well.
Okay.
As far as Charles may know the actual terminology for how far a light shines, but I don't know the exact I don't know, for lack of a better term, circumference of where the lights would shine, but it would light up the it would light up the intersection.
We could play wiffle ball at night. Then, huh?
Yes, it would keep you out of trouble.
Yeah, that would keep me in trouble.
Can
But
you
anyway.
use liquid fuels funds for streetlights?
Not for installation. You can use it for the cost of the electricity.
Well, I mean, I guess.
Don't know the answer. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
that's really
It seems weird, but yes.
And sorry,
No, go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, Dave, what's the cost per month for electricity per light?
Roughly $10.
Okay.
What is it, Dave? I'm sorry.
Roughly $10.
So this is 12 lights. That's 120 a year.
I mean, what I
And-
would probably
light.
suggest, to be, just so everyone knows, what I'd probably suggest before we do anything is give me an opportunity, if it's okay, to, talk to a few more people and just make sure I'm not, make sure I'm understanding where the lights would be, what the proposal would be, so I can talk to, neighbors who may or may not be affected by it and just kind of get more feedback than just the one. I mean, I still think it makes good sense, but at the same time too, I think it probably makes some sense.
I think that's a good plan because that's
Yeah.
a lot of lights. So
Yeah. And we don't,
Yeah.
there might be someone who doesn't want a light there and we don't want to
Right,
do
right,
something if they don't want it.
exactly, yeah, it's the law of unintended
And
Right.
consequences.
how will
Always
we,
seem to-
how will we
Right.
codify the 70% acceptance? Like we will identify the specific residents and then have them sign something? Like how do we,
So at least I have experience with that with speed bumps. And so Dave and I worked together, mostly Dave put together a letter and it gets set. We mailed it out, I guess, right?
Mhm.
And then they could either respond via email or respond via mail. And we got a pretty high response rate there. That was on Surrey Road and everyone I don't think we got any negatives. People really were excited about speed humps, but there have been other situations where we do get them mixed.
We've done that for Surrey and Plush Mill, and I would probably recommend a similar approach here.
Mhm.
Right.
Some people really like streetlights, others do not.
Right.
And I think that's, I believe the speed hump process was, I wouldn't say it was codified because it wasn't by ordinance, but I think it was a policy that was adopted by the board. So
Okay.
certainly something you could change, but, and so that was kind of the intention of these considerations here, was to have some sort of policy that maybe the board could adopt. And, if you're looking at a corner, I would that 70%, if you had 3 of the 4 people there, that would constitute acceptance of the
Mhm.
light.
Yeah, and I mean, just as we look at the criteria, and I think the list is fine. We talked about the list last time, but I am curious, like points 2 and 3 around traffic volume and crime incidents. Are we like where we have something measurable in acceptance of residents at 70%? Is that just, well, if there is, or it's just one more thing under consideration? Do we want to put any kind of measurement around any of these other things?
I think that would be the board's decision, but my thinking was that it would just be an item of consideration.
Okay.
I would imagine in these areas, there's not a high level of crime.
Right.
But, for example, if you had some opposition in a certain area, maybe there wasn't that full acceptance of the 70%, but there's been a lot of crime or something like that, that could be a consideration that might weigh more.
balance.
Right. And
Okay.
that's why I didn't set any sort of rating with these. Like our traffic calming matrix, which and I'm sure
Right.
you've seen, is a lot more objective. It's a little easier to objectify some of the criteria. With something like this, I think it's much more subjective. One person's idea of darkness might be different from another person's.
Of course.
So this was just a list of things that the board could use when coming up with whether or not they want to put a streetlight in a location that's been requested.
That's great. It's a good list. I ran the list by some folks during the polls, and one of the things that got a lot of attention was the idea of what we talked about in terms of schools and bus stops and pedestrian thoroughfare. That was a very, very popular consideration.
Okay.
And if you feel it should have some sort of rating system, I can work on doing that. I thought it was hard to,
It is.
weigh one thing over the other. So
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So next item on the agenda here is Senate Bill 597. And again, I think if Dave can pull up a copy of that, perhaps, please. This bill would move wastewater management under regulation of the PUC. Currently, the DEP regulates our sewer system. Councilwoman and Wallingford resident Christine Ruther shared this with us. Pennsylvania Municipality Authorities Association strongly opposes this bill because it would require a detailed asset management system, which would make it easier for private utilities to research the investment value and purchase municipal water and wastewater systems. So while the township is considering valuing its wastewater system, the new regulation would in fact make doing this mandatory. So I guess, Dave, is that just an FYI, or is there any, I mean, obviously we can discuss it, but
yeah, it kind of was an FYI. If this is something in the past, if there's been an issue that the board felt strongly about and wanted a letter sent to an organization or an agency, we've done that before. I don't know if you have strong opinions on that. If you don't, then it's just an FYI.
okay. Well, here, open it up for discussion, I guess. If we want to do something. Anyone have any thoughts?
And there has been opposition to it from the Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association, and they wrote on behalf of 700 municipal authorities across the Commonwealth. So there has been
Vast opposition.
Yeah, at least from municipal authorities.
How soon, if we know, is a final decision or vote or whatever it is that'll?
We're not sure. I have not seen a timeline on it.
Okay. I was going to say, obviously, if it's some time out, we could certainly monitor this if folks are interested. And I'm sure Councilwoman Ruther, I'm sure will do her best to probably keep us updated.
I think, isn't this also the thing that, that Lee and Kruger's been sending out updates about too? Like, I'm not sure it's probably more FYI for us,
Okay.
not necessarily our level.
Okay. Well, if there's not any further discussion, then thank you. And finally, lastly, we'll get to the April 2021 monthly highway report. For the month of April, the Public Works Department performed their normal monthly duties, which include the following: maintenance of the recycling center, cleaning of inlets and culverts, routine maintenance of signs and intersections, pothole repairs, as well as the routine maintenance of township vehicles. Other work performed by the Highway Department this past April included that they received 142 PA1 calls. All sewers were marked for contractors working throughout the township. Public Works Department received 2 emergency calls as well. In addition, they performed repair work to the bungalow. They replaced the shattered backboard at Sapovitz Park. They did the Duke's root control. Duke's Root Control performed the work that they do. And where is that, Dave? I learned that was, I think that's one of the properties in my ward, which I just learned about recently. Is that correct?
I'd have to check on that.
Yeah. When I talked to you, we patched in Darrell. That's right.
I thought that was I thought that was in response to a question from somebody. I don't know if they were working in that area. I have to check.
Maybe just the Highway Department was going out there monthly and checking.
I think so. Yes, they do check that area frequently.
Okay.
Duke's Root Control comes in a couple of times a year, and they have kind of a routine that they go through in areas that have been troublesome. And I'm sorry, I don't know the exact locations they were recently.
Okay. They finished the gate and fence at Bullens. They started the Pine Ridge storm pipe repair. They performed berm repairs at Stratford, Fairfield, and Palmer's Lanes. And lastly, the township had a dangerous tree cut down at Furness Park. The Highway Department has started cleanup and should have it completed by next week. And as always, can't thank Darrell, as well as Chief and Dave and all the folks and all the departments for all their help. And thank you for all your attention. And that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thanks, Robert. Moving on to my report, the Parks and Open Space Committee. First item on the agenda is the Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program. We've talked about this for several meetings now for pursuing this grant for Hepford Park. In your packets is a preliminary cost estimate. Charles and Dave, I understand you guys went back and reworked a few things because initially we were thinking about replacing the entire fence at Hepford Park, and I think the cost on that was around $200,000. So I'm looking at this revised preliminary cost estimate, and there is still a line item for fencing, but more of sections, because my understanding is a lot of the fence is still in pretty good shape. Going through the cost estimate, we still have line items for a playground upgrade, again, fencing repairs, parking lot improvements, landscaping throughout the park, ball field improvements to include dugout shelters and a concrete pad and some ADA accessibility. And then also a line item for some building improvements. Right now there's a snack bar, a snack stand, and we'd like to try to improve that as well. So the project total comes out to $312,350. My understanding is there's a 15% match. And Dave, can that be cash or labor, the 15?
It has to be cash.
It has to be cash. Okay. So I did some math, and I believe that's $46,852.50. The 15% that we would have to put up. think it would be
2 to 3
2 to
years.
3.
If we're awarded the grant, it's typically in the late fall. So,
Okay.
and then it would take some time for design.
Is this still in the same ballpark in terms of the amount of the grant that we sought from CDBG?
Yes, it's actually a little bit higher because this grant allows for $250,000. And we thought that it might be a good idea to try and work in some playground, some dugout improvements up there at 2 of the baseball fields.
And-
Dugouts are surprisingly expensive.
And we can apply for the grant in if we choose for, in this amount, and we can always kind of rework some of the projects within that amount later on, right?
That's correct. We typically, when grants are awarded for these projects, you don't get the full amount. I haven't seen it very often. So there usually is some element of rescoping if we're fortunate enough to get the grant.
Anyone have any comments about what's proposed here? I mean, additions, subtractions? No?
Ford needs to be a priority. And so that match grant or that match to the grant doesn't make me nervous at all.
No, me neither, especially if we can phase that in over 3 years and we can budget for it. And Dave, just remind me of the deadline again for the application.
Monday.
Okay, so we need to move on this. All right, so I'm going to move to authorize our township manager to apply for a grant with the Greenways Trails and Recreation Program for Hepford Park. Oh, it's already up there, sorry. Okay.
At least a portion of it.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Wait, but now I have a question because that says 250.
That's the amount of the grant, and that's the maximum that we would get through the
Okay,
grant.
okay.
So I think we would request the full amount, and then if it ends up being a tad lower, we can modify that.
Okay, got it. So I will move to have the Township of Nether Providence of Delaware County hereby request a Greenways Trails and Recreation Program grant in the amount of $250,000 from the Commonwealth Finance Authority to be used for Hepford Park rehabilitation. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. All right, that's exciting. I hope we get that. The next item on the agenda is Delco Skate Park questions. There's a nonprofit group that has formed in Delaware County, and they're looking to build or open a skate park or skate parks throughout the county. And Manager Grady and I met with 2 of the members of the skate park committee. I guess it was about a week or so ago. There are residents of Nether Providence Township on the skate park committee. And right now they're just trying to gauge public interest. And what they'd like to know from the board is whether we are okay with them reaching out to residents just to gauge interest. This isn't, talking about where they're going to put a skate park or even how they're going to fund it or what it's going to look like. This is just kind of like the 30,000 foot level. And what they would probably do is they would come up with a survey. Dave and I and others may have some input into the wording of the survey, and then they would speak with residents and then come back to us maybe in a month or 2 and just give us the results of the survey and then kind of go from there. So just informational for now, but I didn't know if anyone has any strong feelings for or against it. If people are against it, we'll go back and report that.
I got several emails about it as well, so I'm interested to hear what residents say. I think I'd be anxious about some of our parks, given I'm not sure they're really big enough and far enough away from residential areas for something that's probably going to be a little bit loud. But I'm fine with them surveying the neighbors just to get their thoughts.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what parks this would make sense
Well, I
for
think
in our
Smedley
very
really,
residential
like the
town.
county park, is all I can really think of. But, I guess it's just interesting if a lot of neighbors are really excited about it, then maybe we work with the county. If there's not a lot of interest, it's maybe not something
And-
we need to get behind.
I agree. And one of the things I asked them to not do, if we tell them, we agree that they should go ahead with the survey, is to not identify any specific location where they think it's going to go yet, because that may have the unintended consequence of angering or scaring some people. So just because, it could be loud, et cetera. All right. So I think we will report back that, the consensus is to go ahead with the survey. All right, moving on, the next item on my agenda is the Furness Park dedication is on June 5th. Looks like Manager Grady's bringing up a flyer on the big screen. So this is to celebrate the grand opening of Furness Park. Everyone knows that the trails are there now. At 7 p.m., there'll be a welcome and some remarks from folks on the Parks Commission and some elected officials as well from the township. And at 7:30 p.m., there is a lantern celebration. So please tell everyone to come out on Saturday, June 5, and celebrate the Furness Park grand opening. All right. And then the last item on my agenda is for the property at 1012 Glen Road that's going to be purchased through the flood mitigation grant program. The current owners of the property are looking to move on, and as part of doing that, they need an offer letter from the township setting forth what the property is going to be purchased for. It's just kind of one step at a time here. So what we have in our packets tonight is an office to purchase letter to present to the current homeowners. But before we talk about approving that, there are two issues that have come up. The first issue is depending on when the home sells, the township is, my understanding is that the township is responsible for paying the taxes for the remainder of the year. So this is especially important with the school taxes coming up. The bills for the school district usually go out in June, and then they're due in August. So if the home were to sell in August, the township would be paying a year of school taxes. So there is a cost there, and it's not clear that we would have enough money from the grant program to cover the full amount of the taxes. It's just a possibility. The second issue is that there may be some asbestos mitigation that needs to be done in the home. And once again, given the amount that we have in the grant, it might not cover the full cost of the asbestos removal. And in that case, the township would have to cover that. So those are kind of two issues just want to make everybody aware of.
Yeah, I feel like we've done sort of a lot to line this up for them. Like, I'm not sure I'm really interested in taking on a lot of extra costs. I don't know what everyone else's feelings are.
Well, I mean, I think the tax part might be hard to get around because once, we become the owner of the property, we're on the hook for the taxes for the remainder of the year. So it just kind of depends on when the house sells. Once that year expires, and then obviously the house has come down and it's vacant land, and then it's tax exempt because it's owned by the township. So this is kind of like, we thought a worst case scenario could be $10,000 for taxes.
And we got a quote today from a contractor to get a sense of what the demolition would be. We had a budgeted number in there of about 35,000. The quote that, and again, we would have to bid this out. So the quote was just for informational purposes. The quote that we received was very favorable and left a lot of room if there was a need for an expensive asbestos abatement. We also have contingency in the grant program as it is. So our first look at it is we should be okay with the grant budget. I think we're going to stay under. There's no match from the township currently. It's a $497,000 grant in total. 424,800 of that would go towards the acquisition of the property, and the remainder would go towards the demolition, the settlement cost, transfer tax, property taxes, the engineering, site restoration, and township overhead. So as it is now, there's no match for the township, and the budget does seem favorable. I think we would be able to do this without extra costs, but there is that possibility if it does run over the 497,000 that the township would have to pay for that.
Here, I have a question for Charles. Given the age of that home, which I kind of would put it in like the 1970s range, where could there potentially be asbestos? Potentially in the roof? Would it be in the flooring or the walls?
Potentially roof and the siding, tile floors.
And then if we have to pay, so there would have to be demolition done to get the asbestos out, which if you rip in the roof and the walls and the floors out, I don't know if there is asbestos in all those places, but if there was, then the cost of the rest of the demolition should drop, right? So maybe.
I don't know. I mean, they're still going to need to bring a wrecking ball out there.
You don't have much left. Yeah.
He's gonna, negotiate those contracts, exactly.
Well, I'm open to whatever Dave and Charles think, but I'm not really interested in taking on more risk on this. I hate to put it sounds like the risk is somewhat low. We should be within the budget, but I would just prefer to work it out in a way where the township takes on the least amount of risk. I don't really feel like it's very fair to use township funds that could be used for parks and other things for something like this.
So
The alternative would be not doing it.
or
What do you mean? I thought we were just talking about the closing time, right? We're just talking about the closing date of it?
This is the offer letter to purchase the home from them. So those are issues that would be
post closing.
post-close, right? So once you acquire the home, we're demolishing it. So these are,
It's ours.
yeah.
Okay, so I thought we were just timing it based on a demolition. Like, can we acquire it and then demolish it quickly towards the end of the tax year so that the risk is low, and then we have basically vacant lots starting fresh?
So depending on when we acquire it, that would change the amount of school district taxes that we would have to pay. So if we're estimating 10,000 for their school district taxes, if we close on it in the fall, it would end up being a lot less. It might be something like $7,000. It's going to be kind of, and it would be kind of dependent on them finding a new home to purchase and when they're able to settle on that home.
And I think they need the offer letter. Because
Yes.
quite frankly, it tells them probably how much money they have to go put towards another house.
It's a little bit of a chicken and egg
Yeah.
situation. Because they can't move forward with finding a new property without an offer
And
letter.
I know talking with you, some of these rules are confusing and people go back, but were there any numbers as far as like if we give them this letter, they have within 90 days or something to give us a vague idea of when the drop dead date is for acquiring the property if we're trying to like game it out to the very end of the calendar to minimize our tax risk? Do we
Sure.
have any guidance as far as like how much leeway we have?
So you were asking about how long do they have to respond, or?
Yeah, like if we give them this letter tomorrow, can we, like, what's the latest that we could potentially purchase?
Well, they're ready to sign it tomorrow.
But I mean, they'll need to have a house. to move into.
The ideal situation would be to close in June, but I don't think that's going to work because then there wouldn't be the need for the school district taxes. It would be very small. So if we don't close in June, then it's
But why not
advantageous.
close in June? Just because they haven't found another house? I'm concerned that we're like doing this all around their convenience, which I hate to sound like a hard ass, but I'm not sure that needs to be the utmost priority, right?
Trying to think if there's a requirement.
Well, how soon do you think we could get out there and get an idea of, we don't even know the extent of what asbestos is or isn't there. How quick could we determine that?
Yeah, they'd have to do an inspection, which actually I think was included in that demolition quote.
What's the tax
I
calendar?
do think that the probably overall risk to the township to have to pay some money is slim. I think it's slim, and I think it would probably be less than $10,000
For the asbestos
in total.
in total. Taxes, any abatement.
Everything, yeah. I think it would be unlikely that we would go above 500 because 10,000 over would be $507,000. So that would be all in with the demolition. Because the demolition price that we got was $21,000 in our budget. We had $35,000. Plus we had a contingency of $21,000. We had to re-amend the budget a little bit, but
And just from my own brain fog here, this is completing the open space that we've been talking about down by Mickey Vernon and all that area.
It connects to those
It
other
connects
properties that
to
we've
the
acquired
Harvey.
along
Yeah,
Boland's.
okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure I was in the right space
Yep.
for that. And so by not doing anything, we can't connect all of that over to the Harvey
But
Trail.
this was initiated, I mean, their house floods, and so
Right.
they wanted us to, work with them to get this program to get them out of their home, and they're getting a lot of money for a home that has a lot of issues. I guess that's why I'm just a little concerned about bending a lot, because they're getting, if you look up there, I mean, they're getting a lot of money for,
Right.
For a home that has significant problems.
Yeah.
I was just thinking if we could get a handle on what the extent of the asbestos issue is, maybe we could come into some kind of agreement with them. I mean, if it's $10,000 to remove asbestos, do we split it 50-50?
I thank you, Kate. I very much agree with Kate here. Like, we're helping you out of a really tough situation. That last clause in the letter, I would have a problem with. If there are other issues not specified that go above the grant amount, like the grant amount will pay for this. Anything beyond that, that's on you.
Real problem with using township money in this situation where they're getting that amount of money for a house with significant
Yeah.
problems.
I agree. I guess, so we've signed a grant agreement.
Right.
I don't know what the
I think the
next option is.
It sounds like we don't want to give them the offer letter yet, is what.
Well, I'd be fine with giving an offer letter but having the letter state something closer to, this is what the grant amount was. We will more than happily purchase the home and do the things we need to do with the grant amount. If this goes above this amount, then it's on you to pay those additional costs.
Yeah, I guess I'd want to talk to Solicitor Scott and figure out how the township shifts that risk. I mean, everything else being equal and we're under the grant amount, great. But
Right.
if we're not, I don't want the township. I guess I don't understand the ins and outs of it, but I don't see why we would take on any of that risk.
No, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I tend to agree with you guys too. So.
The grant agreement does require that the township pay any overages. I don't think you can
That's
actually,
helpful.
I don't think you
information.
can actually shift it.
Well, so the cost of inaction is, just so we're explicit about it, giving the grant money back.
Potentially.
Yeah, and the frustration of the resident. I mean, it's been a long, drawn-out process. And I understand that's not our financial risk, but we've been working with them hand in hand, and now on the finish line, we're kind of like throwing a rock under their ankle.
That's true.
And you'd be potentially losing open space over,
This was an area that we were hoping
Maybe
to
a few
combine with
thousand.
several other parcels to potentially, consider trail work down the road.
Or
No,
do you lower?
I don't think Marty and I want to blow it up. I just was trying to figure out if there's any way to shift the risk. If there's not, then we just need to get it done. But if there's a way to do it.
Or can you lower the amount of the offer based on what the extent of the asbestos is and what it would cost to remove, to the extent it exceeds the amount of the grant?
that was the amount that was approved in the FEMA. That was what was in the grant agreement.
There's
And
not a
the
lot of
grant
wiggle room.
application. I
Do we
think you
have
could try that. It would be probably not well received. We would need to get FEMA approval as well.
Well, can we just, can we get Bob Scott's thoughts on it? I guess I feel a little uncomfortable making a decision without having him say that there's absolutely nothing we can do and the township has to take on that risk.
Yeah, I'm less
I-
concerned about the taxes, honestly. I am
You
much
kinda knew your
more
worst day with the
concerned
taxes.
about the asbestos. Because and it may be completely unfounded, but I know in my home, which is around that same time period, everything's asbestos. So,
Oh, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, Bob Scott's responding, so I'll have you respond in about 5 minutes.
Okay. All right, well, then maybe we come back to
Yeah,
this.
maybe we come back to this later on during the meeting.
Is there a timeline that we need to, like, we're abutting against? Do we need to move on this meeting, or
Based on
can we
Dave's
put it
face,
to
there
June?
appears to be. Dave's very stressed. He's very concerned.
My back is to
We've been
Dave's.
getting, I mean, it's been a very, very long process. This started in the end of 2019. The residents want to act on it. There's also, I know the state is interested in moving as well. I mean, you could wait. There's not a strict timeline, but
Charles, do you have any sense, like, a house like this, let's worst case scenario, just a rough estimate of, I mean, is it $100,000? Okay.
okay, that's helpful. That's helpful.
Okay, so let's
10,000 for asbestos, 10,000 for taxes, that's 20, that's maybe 5,000 at worst case scenario, the budget amount.
Yeah.
this title like in this line item here, we have 21,674. That's including all in for school taxes, township taxes, city taxes, transfer tax, everything. And that would really just be the number if we closed in early July. So the later it is, the lower that number is. The 35,000 there for the demolition of the structure, we got a quote for about 22,000. So that's kind of leaving about 13,000 there for asbestos abatement.
Okay.
Is that fair, Charles? And then, correct. So we've also got 5,000 for grading and landscaping. So in effect, we have $40,000 for the demolition of the structure. So if that 21 holds true, you're almost looking at 18,000 or so for asbestos abatement potentially. We also have township overhead of $4,000. That's my time.
The other thought I had was, maybe, let's say we took possession of the house in August. Could we talk to the school district about, working with us so that we're not on the hook for the rest of the year?
And we also have, that still leaves 2,500 in contingency.
So, all right, well, why don't we come back to this in a bit, see if Solicitor Scott has any thoughts.
And this was something that just all kind of came up in the last, pretty much since this morning.
Yeah.
So this is a very newer topic that we've been wrestling with.
And that place was riddled. Right. Right. Yeah. Because how big was Summit? 20,000 square feet? I think that was my recollection. Oh. I just remember that place had asbestos everywhere.
It was built out of asbestos and mold. That's what was holding it up.
Right. And Al, so what is wrong? All right. So we'll come back to the offer letter later in the meeting. That's the end of my report for now. Moving on to building and zoning with Commissioner Cooper.
Thank you, Vice President Garson. Almost called you President Knapp there. Okay, so 4 items for discussion today. First, status of media walk development at 310 Wallingford Avenue. Construction's continuing. The site, several new foundations have been built and sales are continuing. That's just informational. Item number 2, something to act on. Escrow release number 8. For Media Walk Progressive New Homes, they're asking for an escrow release in the amount of $10,076.31. Charles and his office have reviewed this and they recommend its approval. Dave, oh, thank you. You're a step ahead of me. You pulled it up if anyone wants to look at Charles' letter. So I move that the board approve an escrow release to Progressive New Homes in the amount of $10,000, scratch that, $10,076.31. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. The third item on my agenda is schools and zoning code. So I discussed with Dave today. Apparently, after some digging, the administration found that our current zoning code does not specifically allow schools anywhere in our township, which is a bit odd because I think we have really fantastic schools. Shout out to our schools. So our administration discussed with Bob Lynn of our planning commission, and his recommendation was to amend our zoning code to allow for schools with conditional use approval, which means that we would have the final say as a board over whether or not a property could be used for a school. And so the Board of Commissioners would need to approve any applications. This could give us flexibility if, for example, a charter school wanted to be built here and we wanted to provide feedback or disallow that. It could also allow us to weigh in if the Wallingford-Swarthmore School District was trying to expand one of their properties into a neighboring area or build a new building of some kind. This topic is just informational right now. Is that correct, Dave? We don't need to act on anything?
That's right.
Okay. So if people have any questions, love to hear them. If people seem to be in agreement with the idea of making it conditional use approval, the administration could draft something for a review in a June meeting.
How did it come up?
But Bob Lynn, actually, so there was some interest in doing a charter school in a location. That's what kind of generated the question of like schools are allowed they're in our residential districts right now. They're existing non-conforming. But if Wallingford-Swarthmore, say, purchased a location to do an expansion, they wouldn't be able to do that without a variance. And the benefit of the conditional approval is that it would give the board the opportunity to review the request. And if someone wanted to put a school in a location that wasn't going to be ideal, the board could say no.
Interesting. Makes sense.
So it's weird to have a bunch of schools that aren't technically,
Yeah.
not that they would ever, they were pre-existing non-conforming, so they're fine there, but it's just.
They can keep they can keep the schools and then return the money on the Glen Road.
I have no further comment unless anyone else does. It seems like we have qualitative approval for the idea. Look forward to reviewing the draft at the June meeting. The last item on my agenda is fee schedule updates. So our fee schedule is outdated. Turns out it hasn't been updated since 2008, and I can personally attest as someone who had some work done on their property. It was really frustrating to navigate. Not the fault of our administration, just a little bit of a confusing rule system. So we've been discussing with Lynn Architect, our building code officials, how we can improve and simplify the schedule. Our primary concern is covering our costs and the costs of inspections. And background, this is based on 40% of the fee. So there are sometimes, in my understanding, Dave, please correct me if I'm wrong, where they're charging on like a per item basis. So like if you put in one sink, it's a fee, but if you put in like a massive pipeline that costs a lot more to inspect, it's still one item, so it's still a small fee. And so we weren't recouping a lot of the fees that were required to kind of cover our costs. The new project, in addition to making sure we recoup our costs, is to provide a more simplified and kind of understandable guidelines so that people know what they're getting into when they deal with the township in this manner. So we have an attached schedule. I don't know if Dave has pulled it up yet. Looks like he has. And this would also stop the process of double counting. There are certain things that was confusing, and this is what I was getting to, kind of double counting some fee items and causing frustration amongst some builders and residents.
Media walk, the double.
That was correct, and it was something I experienced as well, and it was confusing from the other end of the perspective. So just giving people an opportunity to review the document and then ask any questions, and if people have any, and then we'll move to make a motion.
So this kind of came up when I did a project at my house. You know, what constitutes building? Just people hammering nails, or like does that include cabinets? You know, because 2% could be, if you do a big, if you do a kitchen renovation, I mean, that could be a big, 2% could be a big number.
It is, it would not include cosmetic items. So things that are non-structural would not be included. So if you're renovating your kitchen, if you're doing new flooring, cabinets, painting, things of that sort would not be included in that price.
Okay.
That it's not
And that's
the
clear in the
basis.
ordinance, or
I'm sorry?
is that clear in the ordinance, or that's just the way we interpret it?
That's under the Uniform Construction Code.
And then all these other, roofing, demolition, mechanical, they're all defined as well under the Uniform Construction Code.
You have a question? Charles has a question. Yes.
That's a fee set by the state, that can change periodically.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes, that's actually why we were updating it, because in our code it said $4, but it has since gone up to $4.50. So, and it's an amount that we remit to the state, but yeah. What you think would be good wording, consistent with PA requirements?
Yeah, I think consistent with state guidance.
Charles, are those license fees at the bottom there? Are all those pretty standard across different municipalities?
My experience, yeah, I'm not, yes, I agree. Something I guess, but, is there any reason why the phone's different than everybody else?
It's a little weird.
That's how it had been for these licensing. We like plumbers better. No,
Is it the plumbers, or is it that the people who inspect the plumbers get paid less?
Well, and then why, if you break out plumbing, now that you bring that up, why not break out, all the other trade, carpenter, whatever? Or is it all just under
I
contract?
think those were specifically commercial, whereas the others were residential. The three that are broken out in specific.
That is a good point. Electrical actually, I think, should be included on a commercial electrician.
I thought it was, I'm sorry.
Would the suggestion be keep plumbing consistent with others?
Yeah.
I'm not sure why that was different in the past.
Unless we have a reason, yeah.
Used to be plumbers on the board. Commercial plumbers.
Making things consistent. If we go a couple lines up, mechanical permit for HVAC unit, is there a reason that's 130?
Yes, that is because our electrical inspections are through United Inspections, and that was their minimum cost. So for them to go out and do the inspection, that was what was needed to cover that. The other ones, building, plumbing, and mechanical, are covered by Lynn Architects. And in speaking with our building code official, he thought $100 was an adequate minimum. Because we do want to make sure that we are covering the cost of, their cost of the inspections as well as our cost. And as Max noted, the fees that Lynn Architects receives are based on what the township takes in as the permit fees. So if that amount is too small, the amount that they will receive is too small, and not really fair to have them do very inexpensive inspection.
I'm fine with all the proposed changes. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Hearing none, I can make a motion. I do have a question, and I'm happy to talk for a prolonged period of time, but this is quite a bit of text. And is there an abbreviated version that's permissible? I guess this is for our solicitor.
Max, were you saying, were you asking if you have to read in all the? No. Because there's a resolution number on top, so I think you can just say, you move to approve the resolution and with the items as set forth, something like that.
Okay. So I move that Nether Providence Township Board of Commissioners approve resolution number 2021-15 as described in the document to screen left and as recently discussed. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, vote by saying nay. Hearing no opposition, the motion passes 5-0. And that's the last item on my agenda. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Finance and Administration with Commissioner McKenzie.
Thanks. The first item on the agenda, the police pension restatement, there's no update there. It's going to be maybe the longest running agenda item. We're working on it. But Dave's working on getting an update, all joking aside. Then the American Rescue Act funds, Dave provided us a list of things that we could use our funds for. We will receive the funds in two payments, $680,000 very soon and $680,000 in 2020. The eligible projects are sewer, water, stormwater, storm sewers. I was under the mistaken impression that we could do roads, which unfortunately we cannot. And so I think, did you pull it up, Dave? David provided a list of some potential projects. I don't know if we have, like, Charles, do you have suggestions, or Dave, do you have suggestions about specific things, or were you looking to the board to just think about it and come to you guys with ideas?
There's been, in my brief time on the board, a number of flooding issues, so stormwater management systems that have been brought up in a variety of areas, and they're pretty expensive projects. So I think using this to maybe take a whack at some of those bigger flooding issues is something I'd have an interest in.
No, I had thought about that. I know that it would be nice to take care of some of them, and I know there are some of the very expensive ones that just affect several households. And while I know it's a huge issue for them, I'm always a little bit weary about spending a ton of money on specific things that don't benefit the greater area. But I mean, this could be a time to do that.
I have a question for David, actually. Do you remember our nonprofit organizations, like something that can be given funding? I remember seeing that in initial guidance. I feel like the guidance I've seen lately has been silent on that. Do you know if that's changed?
It has. All the different professional associations, webinars we've been on has not gone to that guidance of nonprofits such as fire companies and
Library.
libraries. They pinpointed just these four areas. And questions have come up from other people throughout the Commonwealth, writing to representatives. What about fire companies? And it's still a gray area that the federal government has not been able to answer.
So it's a gray area so far. Okay.
You probably got specifics about Commissioner McKenzie put on the board. That's definite. So we're still waiting for some more guidance on this. We just got the guidance 2 days ago about whether you can put it in an interest-bearing account or not at this point. Because when they rolled it out, the federal government, they said just open an account. And our first question was, is it interest-bearing? Will it get interest back? What is it? We don't know. So there's still a lot of, we don't know what we're going back to. I think the next item, Commissioner McKenzie is going to talk about the account. But the answer is for township manager Brady, yes, we have found out 100% what we do those days.
Okay.
I'll check on that tomorrow again.
Yeah, so we'll keep researching and see if giving it to nonprofits or community organizations is a possibility since it is still a gray area.
In the meantime, Charles, can you put together maybe some water sewer type things you think make sense?
Yeah, I'm looking at like the budget wish list we put together each year. I can resend that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful to start thinking about those sort of infrastructure things, and then we could add in the nonprofit piece once we know the answer.
yep.
If it's related to a water sewer project, can they be used as matching funds? Can we like try to maximize some of these dollars?
You can use as much of your own funds as possible with this project. It's just that if it goes over a certain amount, Dave, that's when it starts to become
Audit.
maybe an audit.
Yep.
I don't think we'll get.
I think it was 700 something for the audit. Yeah.
What, 750? I don't think we'll, well, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, another question, possibly for you, sir, is in the idea of the broadband infrastructure. It says projects to serve unserved or underserved households and businesses. My two questions with that is, one, could it combine with the fire companies around something like that so that they didn't have to rely necessarily on a exceedingly loud whistle? And then, so broadband infrastructure limits, I guess, is my question. And then with more people working from home in a bedroom community like ours, is there a definition for what underserved households may be?
Right. I did have a conversation with our police chief about that, and even our fire marshal about low spots in the township. And there still are low spots in the township when it comes to the broadband. And in the federal act that this came out, that was specific really for parts of the country that I may never visit. Not that I don't want to visit South Dakota, but South Dakota, North Dakota, places that are so remote.
Sure.
And we'd have a harder time probably going back to the federal government justifying broadband more so than what Commissioner Cooper had talked about, which was the stormwater. We could prove stormwater in a day, I bet. But we're going to have a problem proving broadband, getting that approved when it comes time to spend the funds, and the federal government says, broadband, your township's great,
Right.
at least under their eyes.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. Thank you. All right.
All right, so I think that's just something to keep thinking about. It sounds like, we need a couple more pieces of information. I think just given the amount we've talked about over the several years, I think I'm interested in some of the stuff Charles has in mind, sewers and water and that kind of thing.
One smaller thing I might suggest is the cybersecurity. If I think there's probably a number of things that we could do. We have a very good system in place currently. Anyone out there watching? But I think as you've seen across the country that there have been some very high profile attacks, and we wouldn't want, not that we would be high profile, but we wouldn't want to be attacked as well. So I think maybe we could have a conversation with GoTo and see what is the absolute best cybersecurity setup that we could do and what would that cost. This might be a good opportunity to do that.
It doesn't even need to be high profile to be terrible. I mean, in my job at the hospital, I'm familiar with some hospitals in the area who had ransomware attacks, and their like cardiac cath and like stroke units were shut down unless they paid millions of dollars to people. So it doesn't even need to be on the news. It can be terrible even at the local level.
We had an attempt here actually, and our IT company was able to stop it.
No,
Yeah,
they're
no, I
all,
think
they're all
all-
good ideas.
All good ideas. All right, so more to come on that. The next item on the agenda is the Rescue Act Pliget account. Like David was mentioning, we're going to authorize opening a Pliget account just to hold these funds, and it can be interest bearing, as he noted. So I am going to make a motion to open a Pliget account. And the account title will be American Rescue Plan Act Funds. Can I get a second? Any comments or questions? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And then my favorite agenda item is the warrant list. All right, let me get my list up here. All right, so. Mhm.
Give it to a new commissioner later if you
Yeah,
wanted to.
exactly. Punishment, right? All right, so first we have the AP bills list on the first page, 21st Century Media, Delco Daily Times, just advertising of our CDBG grant and our 2021 road phase 1 bid. Next on that page, A1, this has been, I've gotten so many comments about the porta potties in the parks. Everyone loves the porta potties in the parks. Good money well spent.
Or it could be money down the drain.
Yeah.
Don't feel bad, Marty. A former commissioner agreed with you who voices opinions to me.
On page 2, BNL disposal, there's a recycling fee for April. Also on that page, BFI is our recycling, and David noted for both of these items, we're within budget, so we're in good shape there. On page 3, the Bureau of Forestry, that's for our DCNR grant application for Martha Burton Park. On page, I didn't have anything on page 4 to highlight, just sort of routine charges. Page 5, our go-to technology, that's our final invoice for the improvements that were made on here to help us be virtual and just help us keep up with the times. Page 6, the Coles charge relates to insurance rewards for our insurance carrier for employees with, these were like health-related incentives. Things like a Fitbit or sit and stand desk that we had talked about several meetings ago and approved. I didn't have anything specific on page 7. Page 8, we'll start to see some charges for summer camp. This is tents for summer camp. And I think we've mentioned a couple times, former Commissioner Baker did a really good job working with township staff to get the summer camp to pay for itself. So these charges will be covered once the camp fees are collected or as they're collected. And then on page 10, the final note on this list, the YCG, that's a calibration for the police enforcement devices. And that's it for the P card list, unless anyone had anything specific they wanted to discuss. Next is the AP bills list. On the bottom of page 1, the Charles Higgin charge to install and repair traffic signals. That was at Providence and Brookhaven, which, luckily we got back up and running relatively quickly. I know there's a lot of chatter about that by residents. Page 2, Delaware County Public School Healthcare Trust. That's Police Department Health and Medical, in line with our 2021 budget. Also at the bottom of page 2 is Lynn Architects, and that relates to what we were talking about before about those permit fees. So that's covered in our permit fees. Page 3, Rico. Sometimes I get notes that crack me up. So this one is actually lower than our normal copier charge, but David pointed it out because it's an upgrade with new features and efficiencies. He's very excited about it. We can tell the township staff's very excited about their new copier. So we're all happy about the $3 less of a monthly pay for our new copier. And page 4, the Wallingford-Swarthmore School District, that's the charge for gas and diesel for public works and the fire company, police, all that. Final list is the interim bills. Throughout here, there are several charges for the amounts that we're paying out related to the volunteer fire personnel. I'm not going to point them all out, but there are quite a few in here, which is great. We were able to help some of our volunteers. On page 1, age of security, this is the final amount that we're paying related to that Sucre bond issue. So I guess this bond company paid their suppliers It's really supply issue. So we finally paid this amount out, and now we are finished with that. Page 2, the DCDA, that very large payment there, the middle of the page, second quarter 2021 sewer disposal fees, and it is in line with 2021 budget. Page 3, Delaware Valley Workers' Compensation Trust, second quarter 2021 premiums for workers' comp, also within budget. Page 4, Delaware Valley Health Trust, medical dental for May of 2021, also within budget. And then I believe, is it also on page, yeah, the middle of page 4, that John Simonera, probably said it wrong, but that's the appraisal of Glen Road and is going to be reimbursed through the grant that we talked about tonight. Page 5, the bottom of page 5, the charge for O'Donnell Appraisal Associates. This relates to the Bullens Lane residential lot that the township is purchasing. And so that's all I had. Does anyone have anything specific they wanted to discuss? If not, I don't hear anything. I will make a motion to approve the AP card list in the total amount of $61,413.93. The AP bills list in a total amount of $155,302.02. The AP interim funds in the amount of $503,440.40. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Moving on, I will take the Community Enhancement Committee report in Commissioner King's absence. The first item is the 2021 summer camp registration is open. Dave, do you know how many spots approximately we have left?
We have 5 spots left.
Get them while they
And
last.
We are also actually in need of camp counselors too. So if anyone is 16 years of age and interested, please check the township website or give us a call or contact Maureen Fayes at mfayes@netherprovidence.org.
Great. Second item on the agenda is the comprehensive planning. So the last comprehensive plan was done back in 2003, and that was in coordination with the boroughs of Rutledge, Swarthmore, Rose Valley, and obviously Nether Providence Township and the school district. There was recently a meeting with Manager Grady and Maureen Fayes and Bob Lynn and Bob Bode. And there was discussion about having to update the comprehensive plan. And one of the first considerations is, do we want to join up with some or all of those entities that we joined up with last time, or do we want to go at it alone? Rutledge Borough has reached out that they would like to join up with us. I'm looking at the minutes from the meeting that Dave and Maureen had with the Bobs. And the recommendation was to actually proceed individually, to proceed on our own. And there are some pros and cons. The pros of going multi-municipal would be grant funding, regionalization of projects. We do all share a school district. There's history between the communities. We could potentially share in costs of large equipment purchases and maintenance. And then obviously I'm sharing in the cost of the consultant to do the plan. There are also cons. It's hard to get a large group together from different municipalities. It can kind of be like herding cats. All 4 municipalities are demographically and need-wise, we're different. We just are. Obviously, Nether Providence Township by far is the largest municipality of the 4 and would be the largest contributor to the project, especially financially. I think there was some feeling that last time around, Nether Providence didn't have a lot of benefits from doing the joint project, and the project took a lot longer than anticipated. One question I have, Dave, you might know the answer to this. Does the state require us to update a multi-municipal, a comprehensive plan every set number of years?
No, they don't require it. The guidance is typically 12 to 15 years is suggested best practice.
And by doing this, would this help us, whether we join up or go it alone, would this help us with future grant applications if we show that we have an updated comprehensive plan in place?
Yes, absolutely. If you have that's a very important thing when you're applying for grant applications. If you can show that it ties somewhere to your comprehensive planning, and you're not just doing things willy-nilly, there's actual direction. That's an important thing.
And that, I mean, that's what we've done with the parks.
Mhm.
We had the plan.
Yeah, we did have our comprehensive open space and recreation plan. We've used that for our applications, and that's been very critical because that was in 2018. It's a lot more recent. It's been a little easier to use. But again, that was just related to parks and open space. Comprehensive planning is just that much more comprehensive and covers a lot more of the issues in the township.
I mean, this is really, what do we want the township to look like down the road, and what are our needs down the line?
I'm really in favor of doing it on our own. I think that 3-year timeline, and I know this has come up a couple times about the way the different municipalities interact, and we are so much bigger, than Rose Valley and Rutledge, and Swarthmore has their own character. I'm not sure how much that makes sense, and I like the idea of just getting it done and being ready for our grants quicker.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you as well. I was just thinking, those other 3 municipalities, because they are so much more pretty much built up than we are, they are using our recreational facilities, and I just don't know, would we want to join up with them for grant opportunities? But we may be able to do that anyway, separate and apart from this.
I guess that was my specific concern, as I know I've talked to some of you and Dave in particular about possible multi-municipal trail work in our region and connecting to the circuit trails. I just want to make sure that not joining up for this doesn't preclude any kind of multi-municipal grant writing trail work down the
When the
future.
county sort of connects, like with the Smedley, whatever that thing is called, the county's been leading the charge on that and connecting all the different municipalities.
That's right. Yeah, it's I think it would still be something that could be covered in the comprehensive plan. The idea of creating this joint trail network, I don't think it would be completely insular like that. There are some advantages when applying for grants of being multi-municipal when you can show a project helps multiple municipalities. But at the same time, I think if it's covered in your comprehensive plan, whether it's multi-municipal or done individually, I think just having it in the plan goes a long way in that grant application.
And, it would be nice to have a committee that's just focused on Nether, that's really doing a deep dive. I think people have often said, like, each ward is like its own little town. And I just think we have a lot of different needs in a lot of different neighborhoods. And it would be nice to really kind of focus on, where we want that to be down the line. But what does everybody else think? I think they're looking for, Dave, I think they're looking for a recommendation from us. Do we want to join up or go at it alone?
When are they looking at, let's just say it was just us. When would the committee begin to organize itself? Do we have a sense of that?
I got to ask that to Dave.
Yeah, the big man over
Hey,
there.
Dave. So, I think Commissioner Malloy was asking, when are they looking like for an answer from us?
There's no deadline. I think you're asking it for when is Rutledge looking for a.
Well, no, I just mean in
Just in
general, when would the committee that you met with as like the nascent part of it, when would they want to start getting to work on a comprehensive plan, a revised one?
My thinking was try and first figure out if we wanted to do it individual or multi-municipal. And then if we had a good sense of what we wanted to do with that, we could go out and get a quote for what it would cost to have a consultant do the project. And then I would probably look for grant funding to help pay for, because there are ways to get funding from the county and from the state to pay for those consultant fees. So I think having a sense of what a consultant would cost to do a comprehensive plan, because I do think they're expensive. I think you're looking at close to upwards of $100,000.
Right.
And there's funding out there to assist. There would certainly be a requirement for a match, but having a sense of that funding would be good.
As part of the professional staff, who probably uses the comprehensive plan the most. Do you have any preference? Is that putting you too much on the spot?
As far as a consultant?
No, as far as doing it in a multi-municipality way or going it alone. And if that's putting on your spot, you don't have to answer. I'm just curious.
I think doing it individually would be simpler. I think we could complete it much quicker. In discussing with Bob Lynn, I mean, he's very seasoned. He's on our planning commission. He's done a number of comprehensive plans. He was here in 2006 for the last one. He's worked with Media Borough, Upper Providence, a number of other places. And, when it's just an individual municipality, you can move a lot quicker. This would be my first time doing a comprehensive plan. I was not here in 2006. So I have not seen a comprehensive plan process. I was a part of a strategic planning process in another community. And that did take over a year, and that was just that community. So when you have other communities involved, it takes a lot longer. But that was one of the points that Bob Lynn and Bob Bode from our planning commission made, was there's a lot of time that Nether Providence would be exerting on other communities that, they spend time with us as well, but, we would be the largest municipality in that. And I think it would be simpler if we did it individually and we would get it done quicker.
But
And then-
given that we're going to fund most of it and be the focus of most of it, adding years to the process just doesn't seem super palatable.
And there's nothing that precludes us from reaching out to our neighbors. To Max's example of the multi-municipal trail, if we want to reach out and say, hey, these are 5 areas where we think we could line up together, we could have a multi-municipal meeting.
And another, possibility is, maybe we could have individual plans, but go out to bid for a consultant for the with the several municipalities. So working together a little bit, but still having 4 individual plans and not having to be involved with all of those plans. But there might be some efficiencies in, the bidding process and having a consultant in the area. It's just an idea. I don't know if places have done it. I don't know if Charles has any experience with that. Not really. Okay. Okay. But
All right.
And it's not something that we definitely need a decision on right now, but we started discussing this in February of 2020. And then when COVID hit, it just kind of hit the back burner. So.
I mean, just for what it's worth, and just with this discussion, I would feel really good about giving the guidance of saying, let's go forward as just Nether Providence. I wouldn't want to give it official until, Commissioner Knapp and Commissioner King had a chance to also weigh in. But if they're looking for anything to move forward, I would say if you need to get back to Rutledge, I'd say we could lean towards going alone.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that will be helpful and can continue the discussion with Rutledge.
Yeah. And certainly I think if all of the communities go at it alone and there's a conclusion that more field space is needed, for example, I mean, we would work together if there was a grant opportunity that was worthwhile. So we still want to be partners with our neighbors where we can. All right, well, that's the end of the community enhancement report. Moving on to infrastructure with Commissioner Malloy.
Thank you, Commissioner Garson. Okay, so I have 4 items for tonight. The first one is the Watershed Restoration Protection Program resolution. I am so excited we're passing a resolution, hopefully passing a resolution on this tonight. We've been talking a lot about it. So this is for the water quality improvements in the Sproul Estates area. We are waiting on the final cost of the estimate, but we are going to ask for the grant maximum of $300,000. This would require a match of $45,000. So with that up there, and I saw previously in the grant amount.
Sorry, Marty. We just got the cost not too long ago. Charles, I actually didn't have a chance to review it. Could you cover the cost a little bit for this project?
Yes. it's not opening for me, but the cost for that was about $200,000. That was for construction, throwing contingency, design. There potentially is right away have to acquire, the pieces of ground that we plan on using are actually excess PennDOT right away we have to get. So when you throw in all the numbers, the $300,000 is probably a good number.
Yes, we'll change that to 300,000. This is going to be 2021. We actually switched up the order of the agenda, so it has become 2021-13. Grant of $300,000 from the Commonwealth Financing Authority of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to be used for water quality improvements. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right. So my second item is for the East Rose Valley tree quote. We are going to be, we received a quote to remove several of the trees along East Rose Valley Road in relation to the sidewalk project that we have going on there. This is not an amount that we need to put out to bid, which is great. Although the DCED is requiring a letter from Solicitor Scott confirming that we are complying with those guidelines, and Bob has approved that letter. Are there any action items that we need to take in terms of approving the actual total bid amount, or, you know?
My recommendation would be to approve a tree quote not to exceed $8,000.
Okay.
We're still waiting on one more tree that was in question. The quote that we have up there right now is for $5,750 plus $1,000. So we're looking at $6,750. I would expect maybe another $1,000.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the quote for the tree removal as related to the East Rose Valley sidewalk project, not to exceed, in an amount not to exceed $8,000.
Second.
Any comments or questions about all that?
This would be reimbursable under the grant as well.
All right. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right. My last two requirements should move equally as quickly. So the East Possum Hollow Road sidewalk project, currently the project is out for bid, and we are expecting bid results on June 10th. So that's exciting. We should have that for our June meeting. And then the DCED Multimodal Transportation Fund is a program that's helped us obtain $750,000 so far. And this is just informational to consider continuing to improve the sidewalk along Providence Road. The grant is due July 31st. We talked about it before. There's no match requirement with this. But I don't think we had any other ideas besides the Providence Road continuation that we want to keep moving along there. So unless anybody else has any discussion around that, feel good. Great. So I think we can move on that in our June and July meetings. And that is all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Dave, before we get to the manager's report, do you think we should go back to the Glen Road issue?
I'm sorry. I thought I apologize. I did tell Dave, but I forgot to tell everybody else that we were going to executive session that meeting with the.
That's perfect. I think that makes sense. Okay, thank you. Thanks. All right, Dave. Okay. Yeah.
All right. For the manager's report here, of course, as I think everyone knows at this point, vaccines are out there. There are many, many ways to get vaccinated. Delaware County has many resources. There's a number of pop-up clinics that are coming into the area. If you know of anybody that needs to be vaccinated or wants to be vaccinated, we strongly encourage them to visit the Delaware County website. David, would you be able to? Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, so we've got COVID vaccination clinics. They're going to be happening on Thursdays at 69th Street Terminal. Again, this is completely free. No health insurance is needed, no ID, no appointments. You can just show up and get a vaccine. It is the Johnson & Johnson, so it is the single dose. Johnson & Johnson is very safe for anybody that has concerns with that. But
I second that as the doctor on the board.
I'm not a doctor. So there are options there. There are also walk-in clinics where you can get Moderna, Pfizer at the Delaware County Wellness Center. Tomorrow is the last day at the Delaware County Wellness Center, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can actually get the Pfizer and the Moderna at this location. There's also locations at the Springfield Hospital as well, and the Wellness Center in Chester. So I imagine these clinics will continue to pop up, but these are ones that are at least relevant for tomorrow. There's also the homebound vaccination program for anybody that it needs a vaccine but cannot make it to a site. So if you're someone or you know are in need of a vaccine, you can call 484-276-2100 or email covid19resources@co.delaware.pa.eus. There's language assistance available, and it is the Moderna vaccine. Couple more vaccine. In case you haven't noticed, it is important to get vaccinated. So here are some other locations where you can get vaccinated too. And again, these are all on the Delaware County website. Finally, moving away from vaccines, there is the Senior Community Services Program, the Delaware County Apprise Program. They are doing webinars. They've done some webinars in May, but the information here is still relevant. If this is something that you're interested in, if you're a senior citizen and you might need Medicare assistance, you can reach out to the Apprise program. The number is 484-494-3796. So even though these May webinars have passed, I think they will probably do more in June. We'll look for that information, but regardless, you can still call to get information if you're stuck with this process. South Media Fire Company is doing a food truck event. Their first Friday of the month food truck event will be Friday, June 4th from 5 to 8 p.m. at 535 Washington Street. They'll have Farmstead Foods, Delco Steaks on the Go, and Owl's Water Ice and Novelties. Another great thing with this food truck event is that there will be a pop-up vaccine clinic there too. Earlier in the day, they'll be doing one at Garden City Fire Company from 12:30 to 2:30, and then the clinic will pack up and then head over to South Media Fire and do a clinic at the food truck event as well. So we love our pop-up food truck events, and we love our pop-up vaccine clinics. So it's a good combination there. We have an electronics recycling event coming up on Saturday, July 17th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Gooley Park, the former Summit School. There'll also be shredding there as well. Yep, absolutely. And so they'll accept most electronics. There are some fees for the older style TVs because of the disposal costs. Air conditioners, dehumidifiers, things of that sort that require disposal fees will require a fee when you're dropping those off. Strathaven High School is doing their senior event on June 4th, and they have asked the township for a noise variance request. Along with that request, they provided a a listing of all the neighbors in the area on Angle and Logan, Brookhaven, where neighbors have accepted that or they've said that they are okay with this noise variance. So instead of the 10 p.m. shut off, it'll be at midnight. So as township manager, I have the authority to grant the noise variance. I did consult with the Second Ward Commissioner Matt Garson where this is, and he agreed. So we have provided that noise ordinance variance, and that is just for the evening of June 4th. Delaware County, as I'm sure many of you have heard, is starting a health department. We actually had a call today through the Delaware County Consortium of Governments and spoke to member Dr. Monica Taylor, Lori Devlin, Grace Gorenflow from Delaware County to talk about the upcoming health department. One of the things that I think is going to be important for the township is the food retail establishment inspections. That's something the township had handled in the past, and this is something the health department would handle in the future. And they'll do it for all the municipalities in Delaware County. So that's something to be aware of. There'll also be other inspections that they'll be doing, such as on-site sewage systems, something the township is currently doing. So there will be some changes there. Hopefully there won't be too many hiccups, but just wanted to make everyone aware of that. Martha Burton Park cleanup is scheduled for June 19th. We've had some neighbors in the area that have been working hard to schedule this. And so this is going to be done in anticipation of the park dedication on July 31st. So if you're available the morning of June 19th, please come out. We're also considering doing a little cookout afterwards as well. So could be a fun day. Our digital newsletter is going to go out tomorrow. I'd like to thank Mona Price for her hard work on that as our new administrative assistant here at the township. She's put a lot of time into this, and I think she's done an excellent job with it. And so this will be coming out soon. We would ask if you have time tomorrow morning, maybe if you can do a quick review of it. Please look for any typos or things of that sort. There's a lot of good information in the flyer. This will be distributed through the commissioner email chains. We'll have it on our website. We'll have it through Facebook. And then we're also going to be setting up an option to have MailChimp signups. So if you're not on your commissioner's email distribution list, that's another way that you can sign up and still receive the newsletter. And lastly, Monday is Memorial Day. So we'd like to thank our veterans and those who've lost their lives in serving this country. So please remember them on Memorial Day and visit. There's a lot of good memorials in Delaware County, so we encourage you to visit those. And that's all I have for my manager's report.
Thank you, Manager Grady.
I'm really, really sorry. Before we adjourn, I just want to give the commissioners a quick update. I forgot to add it to my report on the EAC, our fantastic Environmental Advisory Committee, just so, because I think the commissioners and the public will really like to know. We passed a resolution around the Covanta situation, and part of that resolution was beginning to move on a zero waste initiative in the township. And so the EAC has gotten serious and is looking at a lot of different initiatives. So some of the ones that came up that nothing was formally decided and they're not ready to present anything, but just to kind of put it in your minds. One is curbside composting, which is very, very neat and something that Media Borough has already piloted and been doing. So that's fantastic. Also looking at doing something formal around solarization. So those are two big ideas. And so if folks are interested in learning more and being a part of that, I encourage them to join the EAC. And then finally, we are applying to Swarthmore College's Green Advisors Program so we can get a student from Swarthmore to support the township and move forward on some of these things. So I just want to congratulate the EAC and all the great work that they're doing. So thanks for letting me slide that in.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. Before we end here, I'll wish everybody a happy, healthy, and safe holiday weekend. Our next meeting is the legislative meeting on June 24th. Good night, everybody.